My boyfriend told me to give up my SATs/ACTs and work to put him through college. He said that once he became successful/made it big, he'd give me life as a rich wife. I refused without hesitation and got into Harvard University. He cursed me, saying I was an ingrate and would never find true love from a man. 10 years later, we met again. My ex-boyfriend had his beloved wife by his side and laughed at me for being alone. His partner next to him reminded him, "Shut up. She's the client's CEO." The day before my SATs/ACTs, when Kevin told me to drop out and work to support his college education, I didn't hesitate for a second. I blurted out, "Absolutely not." He immediately began analyzing the situation for me. "Susan's rheumatism has gotten worse these past 2 years, and she needs care. Plus, college will cost at least $30,000 a year." I retorted instantly, "Then the one who should drop out and work is you." My bluntness made him blush. I wasn't going to spare his feelings. "Your grades are only decent because I tutored you. And now the one with good grades is supposed to drop out?" Kevin was a simple-minded person. When he couldn't convince me, his mother started using gentle tactics. When I got home from evening study, Susan was sitting in the living room, wiping away tears. "My body is useless now. Samantha, to keep from burdening you, I might as well die. Samantha, I raised you. I didn't expect anything in return, but when you have time in the future, come back and visit the grave/light a candle for me." I comforted her, "Susan, don't be so pessimistic. Kevin can apply for a student loan to go to college, and work part-time for living expenses. If you can't take care of yourself, he can apply for a single dorm room at school and bring you with him. I can also work during holidays to help with your medicine costs." No matter what I said, it didn't get to the point. Susan stopped beating around the bush. "You and Kevin are boyfriend and girlfriend, and you'll be husband and wife in the future. Why can't you be a devoted wife and support the family so he can focus on his studies? If he becomes successful, you'll have a good life." My father told my mother the same thing back then. But after he finished school and saw the outside world, he resented her. My answer was firm and decisive. Her last words to me before she died were, "Better to earn your own fortune than prop up his ambition." My mother was once the laughingstock of the entire Willow Creek. My mother poured her life's effort into raising my father, who turned out to be an ingrate. She also cared for my paralyzed grandfather for 8 years. She sent my aunt and uncle to elite high schools. All she got in return was my father marrying someone else. Back then, there was no marriage registration system in the countryside. Holding a wedding reception was considered enough to be married. My father used this loophole to deny that my mother was his family's daughter-in-law. He explained to his new wife, "She's just a crazy woman who had a crush on me and kept bothering me." As for me, he claimed my mother deliberately drugged him and got pregnant with me to blackmail him. In those days, it was difficult to even get basic medicine in the countryside. Where would she get a drug that caused hallucinations and enhanced male performance? My father's greatest use for his education was twisting the truth. My mother was abandoned, humiliated, and ridiculed. My mother held my face in her hands and said, "Samantha, you must always remember, don't rely on a man, don't pin your future life on others. You must study hard, go out into the world, and live a wonderful life." After saying that, my mother jumped off the bridge. When they pulled her out, she was so swollen I couldn't recognize her. After my mother died, my grandmother said I was a bastard and didn't want me. My maternal grandparents felt disgraced by me and, believing I was part of the Robert family, they shut me out. At that time, Willow Creek was applying to be a model village. Sending a child with living relatives to an orphanage would disgrace the people of Willow Creek. The mayor decided to arrange welfare/government assistance for me and applied for a subsidy. Whoever took me in would get the money. Susan brought me home. Kevin's father died early, and Susan raised him alone. The Kevin family had little land, and their relatives were poor and couldn't help. The mayor sending me to their house was also out of sympathy for the widowed mother and her son. Although Susan would always put the meat from the table into Kevin's bowl, and she would buy Kevin new clothes and then alter his old ones for me to wear, she never let me go hungry or cold. I didn't care about those things, I just focused on studying. One day, the bull at the entrance of Willow Creek went mad and chased me. Susan came to save me and was gored, breaking her leg. She lay in bed, barely alive, but she held my hand tightly. "Samantha, promise me, if I'm gone, you'll marry Kevin and take good care of him for me." I was moved to tears then. I worried that Susan might really die, so I nodded and agreed. The village doctor said it was just a flesh wound and told us not to worry. After a few doses of medicine, Susan actually recovered. From then on, she told everyone she met that I was her daughter-in-law. Since the road in Willow Creek was paved, the girls who went out and saw the world rarely came back. The number of bachelors in Willow Creek increased. There was a large group of men over 30 who couldn't find wives. Susan proudly boasted to the people in Willow Creek, "This is what you call, strike while the iron is hot." Susan was frugal and turned off the lights promptly at 9 p.m. every night. So I would go to the eaves of the village hall to read and do practice tests and problems. The lights there stayed on until midnight. Susan, didn't you understand? What's the point of a girl studying so much? In the future, you'll just get married, have children, and serve your husband at home. My Kevin isn't like your father. If he ever abandoned his wife and children, I'd beat him to death with a stick. I didn't respond to her and continued to study tirelessly. Although my father was a jerk, his life after college certainly changed drastically. He bought a house in the city and moved his entire family out there. A section of the road in Willow Creek was even built with his donation, and it was named after him, Robert Road. My father's name is Robert Sue. When I hated him, I would walk back and forth on that road. My grades were always at the top of the class. People in Willow Creek said I inherited my father's talent for studying. Few people knew that my mother was also excellent in character and academics. My mother could also write poetry. In a box under the table were several thick notebooks filled with elegant small script, every sentence beautiful. She taught me my handwriting and arithmetic. But for the sake of love, she buried herself. Kevin was 2 years older than me. His grades were terrible. He repeated 2 years and ended up in the same class as me. I tutored him every day. When he dozed off, I would poke him with one of his mother's knitting needles. Susan also supported me, saying that people wouldn't succeed without strictness. In the last practice test before the SATs/ACTs, his grades finally reached the level for a second-tier university. After successfully taking the SATs/ACTs, without any suspense, I got into Columbia University. I was the first person from Willow Creek to get into Columbia University. The day my acceptance letter arrived, the mayor had a long banner hung up, and there was celebrated with fanfare. It was very lively. My grandfather, who I saw often but never acknowledged me, came and put $200 in my hand. He was in tears. "You are more accomplished than your mother." My teacher was also happy for me. "Samantha, you will achieve your wish." Kevin got into a second-tier university in the Midwest. Susan cautiously discussed with me, "Samantha, why don't you take me to New York City? I want to go work there. You and Kevin will need money for college." I didn't really like Susan. She liked to take advantage and loved to gossip. But then I thought about how she had raised Kevin alone all these years. If she hadn't been petty and manipulative, she would have been bullied to death in Willow Creek. Kevin definitely needed money for school. Poor Susan had lived in Willow Creek for most of her life, but for the sake of her son, she had to go to the big city to make a life in the city. I nodded and agreed. I would also work part-time during my free time. Maybe we could look out for each other. We left Willow Creek 10 days early and sent Kevin to his school first. It was the first time Susan had lived apart from her son, and she was very reluctant to part. With red eyes, she kept nagging about everyday trivialities. Kevin, however, looked impatient. "If you really want me to have a good life, just give me more money." Susan took out a wad of cash and gave it to Kevin. Before leaving, Susan had sold the house and land in Willow Creek. Everyone said she had raised 2 college students and would just wait to enjoy a good life in the future. Susan must have taken that to heart. Anyway, I had no intention of going back to Willow Creek. After settling Kevin, Susan and I were heading to New York City. The senior student who picked me up was named David. He was tall and handsome, standing out from the crowd with a sign, like a crane among chickens. He was a senior in biological engineering. The senior student chuckled, "You're the first person in our department to bring your mother to school." Susan quickly corrected him, "I'm not her mother, I'm her mother-in-law. She and my son are together." Davi D was first surprised, then quietly asked me, "Aren't you underage to get married?" I explained, "She's my foster mother." David wore a clean and refreshing white t-shirt and blue sports pants. When he hoisted my dusty worn duffel bag onto his shoulder, I felt awkward and embarrassed. I wanted to carry it myself. He smiled and said, "I'm a grown man, this weight is nothing." When we got to the dorm, David put down the luggage and took out his phone to add me on WeChat. "The school has a freshman mentorship program. If you need help in the future, you can find me." I lowered my head and took out my phone from my backpack. My used phone was bought from a repair shop in Cedar Creek, its casing chipped and peeling. The light from his phone screen made me felt inferior. He told me his phone number and asked me to call him. After David left, Susan was unhappy. Samantha, you can't abandon Kevin just because you got into a good university. Don't turn out like your father. This made me uncomfortable, but I had no comeback. Or rather, I was too lazy to argue. I came to college to study seriously, not to date. I said many nice things to the dorm manager before she agreed to let Susan stay for a week temporarily. That night, Susan and I squeezed onto one bed. I downloaded job finding apps on my phone. I had heard in Willow Creek that older villagers working outside the village usually did construction or moving jobs if they were men, and became nannies or cleaners if they were women. I planned to sign up for jobs tomorrow. With a week before classes started, I wanted to help Susan find work. The next day, I needed to register and pay tuition, but Susan was hesitant to give me my scholarship money. I was the first person from Cedar Creek to get into Columbia University. Cedar Creek and the school had both given me scholarship money, enough to cover my tuition and fees for 4 years. I was under 18 and couldn't open a bank account, so the scholarship money was in Susan's bank account/savings account. I asked sternly, "Where's the money?" "It's gone," Susan said with a stubborn attitude. A surge of anger rushed to my head. I went to rummage through Susan's bag, and she rushed over to stop me. I only found $200 in her bag. She reached out to snatch it. I was young and stronger than her. She stumbled and fell to the ground. Susan just decided to throw a tantrum. "She's killing me. The daughter-in-law I worked so hard to raise has grown wings and is going to beat this useless old woman to death." Susan's scene attracted a crowd. The dorm manager came in to mediate, telling us to talk things through calmly. I cried, louder than Susan. She took my scholarship money and now refuses to give me a penny to pay my tuition. The matter eventually escalated to the principal's office. Susan acted like a dead pig not afraid of boiling water. She had no money and was willing to die. Susan looked thin and wrinkled, and the principal couldn't bring himself to be harsh. The school finally agreed to let me defer my tuition and pay it before the end of the first academic year. Susan and I started the Cold War. I left early and came back late, hardly speaking to her. I didn't have the energy to talk to her. I once thought that once I got into college, my future would be bright. But after starting college, I felt like a country bumpkin in the big city. Classmates discussed the Republic, Utopia, and Catch-22, and I had no idea what they were talking about. In high school, I could maintain excellent grades by doing practice tests and problems over and over again. College courses were completely different. It was all knowledge I had never heard of before. The professor lectured nonstop in class, but it sounded like a foreign language to me. For the first time, I was so anxious about falling behind that I cried. A classmate next to me told me to find cutting-edge information online and preview IT in advance. That's when I realized I was the only one in the class without a laptop. Even if I had one, I wouldn't know where to start looking. My studies were confusing, and my life was a mess. I desperately needed money. There were many restaurants around the school. I went to each one and asked if they were hiring part-time workers. When they heard I was a Columbia University student, they immediately refused. I begged them to cut my salary in half, but they said I was just messing around. My life felt like a roller coaster, plunging from the peak to the valley. Kevin called me then, asking to borrow money. He said he needed to buy a computer and pay for materials for his studies, and he didn't have enough money. "Susan gave you my tuition money, and now I still owe tuition. How can you have the nerve to ask me for money again?" On the other end of the phone, Kevin also got angry. "We're boyfriend and girlfriend, we should help each other. Why did you become so materialistic after leaving Willow Creek? Do you just want to spend men's money?" I hung up the phone directly. Every day, besides attending classes, I went to the library. Sometimes I would research late at night at an internet cafe. When I returned to the dorm, it was pitch black. Susan's voice was like a ghost, almost scaring me. "Coming back so late? Were you working?" "No." Susan's voice became shrill. "Then what are you doing wandering around all day? Are you seeing someone outside?" I was tired and didn't want to talk. I didn't wash up and just slept on the bed in my clothes. Susan was relentless. "You need to tell me clearly, did you do something wrong to Kevin?" I just turned my back and continued to sleep. "If you don't go to work, are you going to starve me to death?" Her voice was particularly harsh in the quiet room. There were 4 of us living in the dorm. Someone impatiently grumbled, "Can we get some sleep?" This wasn't her home after all. If she disturbed there's rest, and got kicked out, no one could help her. Susan immediately shut up. Early the next morning, Susan insisted on talking to me. She started right away, "You give me $800 a month for living expenses." She had also gone out to ask about jobs these past 2 days. Probably realizing that prices in New York City were high, she changed her tune, "You have to give me at least $1,500 a month." I finally understood that she hadn't come to work, but was planning to continue relying on me for household expenses. No. This was the truth. I not only owed tuition now, but also had to figure out how to earn living expenses. Although the food in the dining hall was cheap, I still had to pay real money for it. And I needed a computer. These expenses were already giving me a headache. She took my scholarship money, how could she still righteously demand money from me? I shook her off and continued to give her the cold shoulder. One moment of softness had led to endless harassment. One evening, when I returned to the dorm, I ran into the dorm manager who was checking rooms. She initiated a conversation with me. "Don't get involved in dating while underage. Focus on your studies. You've already worked hard for 12 years. Just 4 more years, and you'll be set." I didn't need to guess, Susan must have gone to the dorm manager to complain. What surprised me was that the people here were different from the people in Willow Creek. If this were in Willow Creek, they would definitely say, "Don't be ungrateful. It's most important for a woman to serve her husband and mother-in-law well at home." I was very grateful to the dorm manager. She was a bit like my mother, reminding me to prioritize my studies. The dorm manager knew about Susan taking my tuition money. She introduced me to a convenience store outside the school where I could work a night shift part-time. The money wasn't much, but it could temporarily solve my food problem. Time flew by. Susan had been living in the dorm for 2 months without realizing it. The other 3 roommates complained about Susan and demanded she move out. Susan often quietly took their toiletries. At first, they felt sympathy, thinking she was just a simple old woman from the countryside, trying to save money. But seeing that no one spoke up, Susan became more brazen. One roommate accidentally discovered that Susan was using her 1002 face cream to rub on the cracks on her feet. Susan would also use their face basins to wash her feet. Susan tried her usual tactic of throwing a tantrum, but it didn't work here. My roommates called the dorm manager and showed her the dorm rules. It's clearly stated that non-school personnel are not allowed to stay overnight. If the school doesn't make her leave, I'll bring my whole family from the countryside here tomorrow. I felt so ashamed, I wished I could disappear into a hole in the ground. My poverty and lack of knowledge already made me feel inferior. Add to that a foster mother who only caused trouble and threw tantrums, making me a laughingstock. It felt like it was about to shatter my courage to live and the ideal life I had dreamed of countless times. The school didn't dare to kick her out completely either. An old woman with a wrinkled face who had never seen the world. If she was kicked out, she might not survive the winter. To avoid disrupting the students' normal routine, the school arranged a room for Susan in the staff dorms. It was a storage room, but it had heating. Just the thought of living alone with Susan made me feel oppressed and suffocated. In the dorm, she was constrained by the other roommates and didn't dare to yell. I left early and came back late, just for the peace and quiet. Living alone with her, I had no doubt she could argue with me over small things until dawn. The dorm manager called a few male students to help Susan move her things, but my roommate gently held my arm and whispered, "We're not excluding you." She was signaling for me to stay in the dorm. My eyes instantly turned red. In the 3 months I had been living in the dorm, I had very little interaction with them. At most, we would just nod when we saw each other. But they saw my difficulties and quietly helped me. Classes during the day, work at night. A month later, I fell asleep in class. More accurately, I fainted. I woke up in the school infirmary. The school doctor said I was overtired and had low blood sugar. The school doctor advised me, "Be sure to balance work and rest, get more rest, and don't waste time on games." I lowered my head and didn't explain. Even if I explained, no one would sympathize. David, who was there to get medicine, overheard this. He walked over and sat beside me, asking, "Are you having some difficulties?" I shook my head and forced a smile. I didn't like to talk about my past or my hardships in front of others. No one wanted to listen, and no one cared. David sat down by the bed. "Don't be fooled by outdated notions. Perhaps the difficulties you think are insurmountable are just a small favor in the eyes of others." He seemed to see through my thoughts. I quickly lowered my head. He continued, "We will eventually go out into society. Society is made up of people, and to fit into this society, you have to fit into relationships with people." I had always kept to myself. My relatives didn't want me, and my classmates mocked me. My only close friend got married after junior high school graduation. When I saw her again, all she talked about was her husband, children, and housework. I simply stopped making friends and put all my energy into studying. David suddenly reached out and lifted my chin. I had to look him in the eye. Trust me, if you want the road ahead to be easier, make more like-minded friends. His eyes were bright, like a lighthouse in the dark night. He made it impossible for me to avoid him. I told him about my situation. I kept it simple, struggling with studies and short on cash. David had a friend add me to a school work-study group. Job postings were often shared there, daily pay, weekend jobs, and summer jobs. People could choose based on their free time. My eyes welled up. Thank you. David lightly patted my shoulder. If you don't mind, think of me as a brother. I found a phone while studying in the library. The owner called and arranged a meeting point to return it. That's how I made my first friend in college, Luna Lee. She was in the same department as me, 1 year ahead. She said her mother's idol was Marilyn Monroe, which was why she was given that name. I looked her up online and learned she was an American film star from the mid-20th century. Meeting her led to me getting my first laptop. She saw my dense handwritten notes and how I was still using my old phone to research. Luna Lee said, "I have a friend who's a tech enthusiast. He gets a new model as soon as it comes out. He has a laptop that's 90% new. Electronics depreciate quickly, so it's only a quarter of the price." So, for 1,000 yuan, I got the first laptop of my life. Susan saw my laptop bag. She forcefully grabbed it to look inside. Kevin was telling me he wants a computer too, maybe this one. I snatched it back without politeness, guarding it like a treasure. "This is essential for my studies." Susan pouted. "You have money to buy a computer, but no money for my living expenses?" I gave her 500 yuan. If she was frugal, that was enough for a month in the school dining hall. I detested Susan's greed, but I couldn't completely ignore her. Someone driven to desperation would do dangerous things. Using money to buy peace and quiet at least allowed me to finish my studies smoothly. The school understood Susan's plight and arranged a cleaning job for her. I was incredibly grateful to the school. Susan, however, was full of disdain. She had to get up at 5 a.m. to work. In the freezing weather, she called me. "When I saved you back then, the bull gored my leg. It hurts every winter. Go sweep the floor for me." The doctor had said it was just a flesh wound back then. She had already used this to manipulate me once, making me Kevin's girlfriend. Using it again wouldn't work. I refused without hesitation. I would turn off my phone when I went to bed. Susan came looking for me in the early morning, constantly knocking on the door. My roommates cursed loudly. "Knocking like a ghost. If you keep waking me up, I'm calling security." But in the end, she persevered. The blood she extracted from me wasn't enough to support Kevin. At the end of the first semester, my exam results weren't ideal. I had to make up for it during the winter break. I also needed to work part-time. I heard that part-time work during the 7 days of Chinese New Year paid triple the usual rate. Luna Lee wasn't going home either and wanted to make some extra money during the 7 days. Luna Lee came from a good family, but she was independent. She only let her parents cover her first year's tuition and living expenses. She would handle the rest herself. Susan wanted Kevin to come to New York City for Chinese New Year. Kevin couldn't get a ticket. I thought the ticket was an excuse, and the real reason was lack of money. I didn't care and wouldn't get involved. I still left early and came back late, trying to avoid Susan as much as possible. Susan seemed isolated and unsophisticated, but when it came to money, she was shrewd. She somehow found out that part-time work during Chinese New Year paid well, so she asked me for money for the holiday. I wasn't afraid of her causing a scene. The fact that she had taken my tuition money was common knowledge. As soon as I brought that up, her momentum would weaken. Many students here were independent thinkers and passionate. Even if their own mother exploited them, these students would curse him out, let alone a foster mother. And she wasn't even a real foster mother. Willow Creek had given me child support. On Chinese New Year's Day, Luna Lee and I worked as waitresses at a restaurant/bar. The restaurant/bar was busy, filled with people from other places working in New York City, gathered to celebrate the new year. Everyone listened to music and shared their joys and sorrows from the past year, hoping for peace and security in the coming year. At 9 p.m., I received a call from the police station saying Susan was lost on the street/avenue. My first reaction was that Susan was causing trouble again. I said impatiently, "I'm working right now and can't leave. Can you please ask the police officer to take her back to the Columbia University dorm?" As soon as I finished speaking, there was a sharp wail on the other end of the phone. This was one of Susan's usual tricks, pretending to be mentally ill, crying and shouting for sympathy. I really wanted to hang up, but it was Chinese New Year, and Susan making such a fuss was disturbing the police officers, so I had to ask my boss for time off. Luna Lee explained to the boss that I had a mother with mental health issues. The boss was understanding and let me go, even paying me for the day's work. I went to the police station and brought Susan back to the dorm. She looked smug. "If you don't give me money, I won't let you work." I was calm and lay down on the bed. When I had nothing to do, I slept to regain my energy so I could fight with her. Susan demanded that I prepare a New Year's Eve dinner and give her money for filial piety. I said slowly, "You can have the police come ask me for it. I'd like to see if, when you tell the police that you caused me to lose my job and are still asking me for money, they'll help you or me." That night, neither of us ate anything. Susan was silent all night, probably regretting messing up my part-time job. Early the next morning, Kevin called me. Again, asking if or money. He said he was cold and hungry alone in the dorm. He demanded to know why, as his girlfriend, I wasn't showing concern and at least giving him money. "My job that paid triple was messed up by your mother. As my boyfriend, you should compensate me." Kevin then yelled at Susan over the phone for this, calling her senile for losing the money that rightfully belonged to him. Susan came to apologize to me. I ignored her. I had to figure out a way to get rid of her. Find a job further away from Columbia University and something easier. As soon as she left, I would check out of the school dorm. It would be difficult for her to move back in. I told Luna Lee my plan. She immediately rallied her friends in the part-time job group to help me look. Before long, they actually found a suitable job for Susan. A warehouse was hiring a warehouse manager. It included food and lodging, $3,000 a month. Susan was uneducated, so they didn't want her at first. But a classmate knew the boss and talked him into it, saying it was out of pity for an old woman from the countryside. The boss agreed. Susan was very happy to go. She would have food and lodging and wouldn't have to endure wind or sun. Susan felt it was more respectable than being a cleaner. And she never imagined she could earn $3,000 a month in her life. In Willow Creek, that was her year's expenses. Susan was calculating. Food and lodging were covered there, but she was still thinking about the school dorm. She picked up a pile of scrap metal and put it in the room, thinking that as long as she didn't move, the school couldn't take the room back. The dorm manager clearly told her that the school was not obligated to provide her with housing. If she left, the dorm had to be reclaimed. The workplace was over an hour away from Columbia University by subway alone. The job was more important than the room. Susan had to reluctantly clear her luggage out of the dorm. Without Susan around, I felt like the weather improved. The sky was a flawless blue, and the sunlight was gentle and warm. David managed to get 2 spots as volunteers for the medical expo. Luna Lee's eyes lit up. This is a rare opportunity to learn about the most cutting-edge medical equipment. Just visiting would only give a superficial understanding. Being a volunteer would provide a chance to meet people from medical device companies, which could be a future career path. I felt a little excited. Will senior student David also be a volunteer? Luna Lee looked at me as if I were an idiot. You're so close to him, and you don't even know what his family does? David was the 3rd son of Mashin Group, one of the top 10 medical companies in the country. Luna Lee also warned me, senior student David is charismatic. You must not fall in love with him. His eldest brother married the daughter of a biotech company owner, and his second brother married a top student from a pharmaceutical research company. His wife will be from a wealthy or prominent family. We should just admire from afar. I knew my place. Senior student David and I were worlds apart. But hearing those words, my heart couldn't help but ache. I admired him, I was drawn to him. It was involuntary. But he was ultimately a star in the sky, to be observed only from a distance. The medical expo lasted for 3 days. It was eye-opening. David gave Luna Lee and me a detailed introduction to Moshing's current development and future plans. Listening to him, my heart swelled. He smiled and said, "I look forward to you becoming employees of Mashing." Seeing the light shining in his eyes, I found a direction for my future efforts. I cautiously asked, "Senior student David, can I invite you to dinner?" Afraid of being misunderstood, I quickly explained, "You've helped me so much. I couldn't repay your kindness, so I can only treat you to a meal." This was the first time I had ever offered to treat someone to dinner. If it weren't for his help, I wouldn't have had the confidence to do so. He nodded. "Okay, I'm busy with a project with my advisor lately. I'll come see you after I'm done." I happily counted down the days waiting for David to invite me to dinner. But instead, I received a call from Kevin asking to borrow money. I had already refused him many times. If he had any shame, he wouldn't ask me again. This time, Kevin was urgent. Samantha, this is life or death. I really have no choice. Just lend me 100,000. 100,000? I immediately swore at him. If you're sick, go to the hospital. Don't come here acting crazy. On the other end of the phone, he actually started crying. If I don't get this money, I'm finished. I'll be expelled from school. Samantha, you're my girlfriend, you should help me. I asked him what had happened. He stammered, saying he had offended a powerful figure. If he didn't come up with 100,000, they would beat him up so badly he wouldn't dare go to school. I suggested calling the police. That's extortion. Call the police right away. Kevin became more agitated. Don't worry about the details. I've told you the reason. Hurry up and get me the money. No. I quickly hung up. Susan also called me, telling me to raise money for Kevin. I refused without hesitation. When she called again, I just hung up. Susan took leave from her job and rushed to the school to find me. My roommate sent me a text message, telling me to stay at a friend's house tonight. As long as she couldn't find me, she couldn't cause a scene. Those days, I happened to be giving a pre-exam tutorial and wasn't at school. I didn't go home at night either and found a cheap hotel to stay in. During this time, I received a call from the police saying my mother had reported me missing. I explained that it was a former foster family demanding money from me, so I was hiding. The police understood the situation and didn't bother with Susan anymore. Luna Lee told me that Susan even went to the principal's office and demanded that the school hand me over. The principal had long been scornful of Susan's exploitation of me. As soon as he called security, Susan ran away. I thought she had been defeated and wouldn't come back. A few days later, I received a call from the mayor. The mayor first blamed me for letting down the expectations of Willow Creek. Then he asked with concern, "You should take good care of yourself and be filial to Susan. She's trying to raise money for you, begging from door to door." I instantly understood that Susan was borrowing money in Willow Creek using my name. I had to clarify. Otherwise, it would bring shame to my mother and my maternal grandparents. I told the mayor that nothing had happened to me, and that was Susan's personal behavior. I had to fight back. I needed sufficient evidence. I had to go to Kevin's school first to find out what had happened to him. Luna Lee suggested I bring a helper. For such a practical opportunity, I could pay 2,000 yuan to have a law student act as a consultant and bodyguard. In the school's part-time job group, I explained the situation, and a student named Grant offered to help for free. I just needed to cover his travel and accommodation. Grant and I, weary from travel, rushed to Kevin's school. When we inquired, we found out he hadn't been to school for a long time. No one knew what had happened. I had to call Kevin and ask him to meet me. I pretended not to know what his mother had done. I said with a worried look, "Last time you said someone was threatening you. Thinking of our many years together, how you've always looked out for me like a brother, I couldn't just sit by and do nothing. I specifically found a law student senior to help you. We can sue him for blackmail/extortion." Kevin's brow furrowed slightly. He gave an awkward, forced smile. I was certain that the truth was not that he was being blackmailed. I then appealed to his feeling. I genuinely want to help you solve this. If I wanted to stay out of it, I wouldn't have spent the time and money to travel this far. Kevin looked at me, then at Grant, who was standing next to me with a righteous expression. He paused, then grabbed my hand and began to cry bitterly and confessed. Soon after enrolling in school, Kevin got involved with a hair salon owner. He had never experienced any of the affection or warmth of a relationship with me. The hair salon owner gave him a passion and tenderness he had never known. Now the owner was pregnant. If he didn't come up with 100,000 yuan for an abortion, she would sue him for rape. Then he wouldn't just be expelled from school, he would also face jail time. He currently didn't have 1,000 yuan to his name. He sighed, "My mom said she would get me the money. I don't know where she went." I sneered internally. "Your mother went to ruin my reputation to raise money for you." I spoke righteously and advised him, "You can't blame yourself entirely for this. She's also responsible. How can she make you bear the consequences alone? That's simply going too far." My attitude made Kevin look surprised. "You're really willing to help me? Consider this as me repaying you and your mother for taking care of me." I had Grant accompany Kevin to negotiate with the hair salon owner. Grant, as expected of a top law student, used a mix of tough and gentle tactics. First, he explained the legal provisions for filing a rape case. Then he explained the consequences of false accusation and framing. Next, he appealed to her feelings, saying they had a genuine relationship. As a man, Kevin should take on more responsibility. The hair salon owner listened, first sneering, saying she would fight to the bitter end if she didn't get 100,000. Grant found a loophole, stating that the other party was suspected of blackmail/extortion. He said that getting involved with a married woman was merely a moral mistake, and the school had no right to expel him. If the owner didn't compromise, the most that would happen was a paternity test after the child was born, and then they could discuss child support. After saying this, Grant pulled Kevin and started to leave. Seeing that there was nothing else she could do, the hair salon owner agreed to just 3,000. But Kevin didn't even have 3,000. After sorting out Kevin's situation, I immediately rushed back to Willow Creek. I presented the evidence to the mayor. Susan was completely shamed. Her son had gotten someone pregnant and couldn't pay. Not only did she frame me, but she also tried to cheat the villagers out of money with this. Susan immediately became the target of public criticism. Despite her crying and apologizing, some villagers were so angry they grabbed brooms to drive her out of Willow Creek. Those who were related to Susan avoided them like the plague. Upon further inquiry, I learned that Susan had lost her job at the warehouse. Hearing that Kevin was in trouble and needed money, Susan asked the boss for an advance payment, but the boss refused. She then stole items from the warehouse to sell and was caught red-handed. Out of pity for her age, they didn't call the police but fired her. Susan and Kevin were completely isolated and helpless. At this point, I took out the agreement that Grant had helped me draft. I would use 3,000 yuan to buy out Susan's nurturing grace towards me. Kevin and I would end our relationship and have nothing to do with each other from then on. When people are pushed to their limit, they disregard everything else. Susan and Kevin readily signed the agreement. Finally, I was rid of these two people who tried to exploit me. On the way back, I felt a sense of relief I couldn't quite describe. I had borrowed 2,000 yuan from Luna Lee for this money. I would write her an IOU when I got back. She waved her hand. No need. That money is from David. Gee. Oh, thank him instead. I called David to thank him. He said, I just hope you don't get tied down by relationships that aren't worth it. No matter how much kindness someone shows you, if it hinders your growth, you must bravely cut them off. By the end of my second academic year, I had received A's in all my subjects. I also began to prepare for grad school exams. David recommended me to the most famous Professor Thompson in the department. Professor Thompson was a big name in our field, renowned in the industry, and a consultant for many biotech companies. Professor Thompson said, anyone David recommends is usually excellent, but ultimately, your performance will speak for itself. I admire resilient students who face challenges. I believe you can do it. Before this, I wouldn't have dared to apply for Professor Thompson's graduate program. Even thinking about it felt like a luxury. David also sent me a study list. He said it was based on the successful experiences of senior students who got into grad school, and it was consistently effective. Accepting these resources, my eyes turned red. We had met by chance less than 2 years ago, and we didn't interact frequently, yet he was the best person to me besides my mother. It was a beautiful April day, the gentlest and warmest time of year. I used my birthday as an excuse to invite David to dinner. This time, he readily agreed. He gave me a small pure gold ring with a crown design. I said it was too expensive. David smiled and said, girls are all worth cherishing. This is just a small gift, insignificant compared to your beauty. My heart surged with emotion. After dinner, David offered to walk me back to the dorm. Walking side by side with him on the tree-lined avenue of the school was a scene I had only dreamed of. In this moment, my dream come true, I couldn't help but want to shout it out loud, to tell everyone how happy I was. Even if this happiness was fleeting. As we neared the downstairs from the door, a dark figure suddenly darted out, making me scream. David quickly shielded me. Looking closer, it was Kevin. His appearance meant trouble. I asked coldly, what are you doing here? Kevin looked wronged and knelt down in front of me with a thump. Samantha, is it because of him that you dumped me? David knew the history between Kevin and me. He gently advised, buddy, a relationship takes two people. If you can't be lovers, you can still be friends. Why be so aggressive? Kevin lunged forward. David thought he was going to fight and clenched his fists. Unexpectedly, he knelt and hugged David's leg. Please give Samantha back to me. Without her, I'll die. His wailing and crying attracted many students to watch. Kevin kept shouting about how his family had put so much effort into supporting me through college, but I turned my back on them. He said I had met a rich guy and now looked down on and abandoned him, but he chose the wrong place to make a scene. Many students in the dorm knew a lot about what happened between his mother and me. As soon as I said he was Susan's son, everyone scoffed at him. He's the son of that mother who tried to exploit her. Trying to exploit people with his whole family. Kevin was also stunned for a moment, not expecting his mother to have such a bad reputation at school. The dorm manager rushed over when she heard the commotion. Learning that it was Susan's son harassing me, the dorm manager was furious. I introduced this girl to her first part-time job. She attends classes during the day and works part-time at night, working tirelessly. How dare you say you raised her? She has to support herself and your mother. Kevin didn't gain any advantage and ran away in a flash, scared. I apologized to David. I'm sorry I got you involved. David shook his head and smiled. I'm proud to be able to protect you. There was a senior student in the part-time job group who particularly enjoyed browsing online forums. He messaged me privately, saying he saw a post on a very popular online forum with my photo in it. He sent me the link. I clicked on it and read 2 lines and knew it was Kevin's doing. Girlfriend dumps poor boyfriend who put her through Columbia University on the eve of graduation after landing a rich guy. The words Columbia University were very eye-catching. There were many replies below the post. Most people felt sorry for him and told him not to let the despicable couple get away with it. Only a small number of people waited to see what would happen next. The post hadn't been up long and hadn't spread widely yet. The senior student told me to quickly find the administrator to delete the post. I contacted the administrator, explained the situation, and provided some evidence. The administrator promised to delete the post as soon as possible. I asked him to keep my reporting confidential for now. It seemed they were determined not to leave me alone, so I had to find a way to solve it once and for all. I pretended not to know anything and contacted Susan and Kevin. Their situation was precarious. After Kevin's incident with the hair salon owner last time, he couldn't stand the loneliness and went back to her. Her husband found out and came to his school every day to bother him. He didn't dare stay at school, so he took a leave of absence and came to New York City to make a living. Kevin was arrogant and lacked practical skills. He spent half a month achieving nothing. Living expenses in New York City were high, and the mother and son were struggling financially. I guess they wanted me to support them again, so they were trying to create public opinion to force me to go back. I said that out of consideration for our past relationship, I couldn't stand by and do nothing. I could offer Susan a job as a warehouse manager that included food and lodging. They only hired people over 40, so I could only recommend Susan for now. Susan was overjoyed and immediately agreed. Holden. My hand. Samantha, I knew I wasn't wrong about you. If you could forgive my Kevin. I shook off her hand. I'm preparing for grad school exams and I'm very busy. I don't have time for dating. Luna Lee had a relative in New York City who ran a warehouse that stored goods for some companies. According to my plan, I also found 2 workers to chat outside the warehouse. They talked about how computers were often stolen from the warehouse and the higher-ups didn't care. They said they would also take 2 computers tomorrow and could sell each for at least 800 or 900. Sure enough, Susan took this to heart. She had Kevin go there every now and then, pretending to deliver late-night snacks. After half a month of this, Luna Lee had her relative notify the security department to catch them. The security guards caught Kevin trying to move computers near the factory wall. The value of the items they stole was around 20,000 yuan. They would be sentenced to 3 years at least. Kevin called me, begging me to save him. Go ask the boss, tell him you'll pay him back, and ask him not to sue us, okay? I scoffed. I kindly introduced your mother to a job, and you repay kindness with malice. Now the police are involved, and there's no way to withdraw the lawsuit. You can just wait to go to jail. The days I took my grad school exams, the theft case of Kevin and Susan was also decided. They wouldn't interfere with my life for at least 3 years. I was admitted to grad school without the exam. Luna Lee failed her grad school exams last year and received a job offer from a company. She planned to work and prepare for grad school exams again. Before she left, Luna Lee quietly told me that day she intentionally left her phone next to me. She was acting on David's request to take care of me. She encouraged me, I think he likes you. Try harder, maybe you'll really win over that handsome man. I smiled and said, how could I possibly deserve him, though? I spoke stubbornly, my heart leaped. What woman wouldn't be moved by a man like David? He always appeared in my beautiful dreams. In my dreams, he was infinitely gentle, whispering I love you in my ear. Waking up, my heart would be filled with melancholy. Luna Lee's words ignited the passion I had suppressed 100 times. I invited David out to dinner. I wanted to confess my feelings to him, but the words caught in my throat several times. I was afraid that if he refused, we wouldn't even be friends anymore. As the meal was ending, I tentatively said, "You're working now, and I'll be staying in school for grad studies. We'll see each other less often. We're in the same city, it's easy to meet up." He smiled very gently. Looking at his smile, I still couldn't muster the courage. Since he said it would be easy to meet, I decided to let time determine our fate. Graduate school life was very busy, so much so that I didn't even have time for idle thoughts. I worked on many projects with my advisor, and my diligence and dedication stood out among the other students. When I graduated, upon my advisor's recommendation, I was successfully hired by a research institute. David proactively reached out to me and invited me to join his company. I hesitated. Joining the research institute would allow me to better develop my specialization. But he suddenly took my hand. "Samantha, I really, really need you." Looking into his deep, hopeful eyes, I nodded. Without him, I wouldn't have had such a smooth academic journey. Immersed in heavy coursework for so long, I also yearned for love. On many lonely, empty nights, I couldn't help but think of David. I imagined a happy life with him. I also wondered if he already had a girlfriend and felt sad. My heart was pounding. I cautiously asked, "Why are you so determined to have me join your company? The first time I saw you, I had a feeling you would be my girl." David's voice held the tenderness I longed for. "So I spared no effort to help you. I knew I was helping myself too." With a surge of passion, I became David's secretary. From school to the workplace, I had a lot to learn. My pressure was immense, and I often suffered from insomnia. David would make coffee for me when we worked late. He would drape a jacket over me when it was cold. He held my face in his hands and said, "You are a stubborn dandelion. No matter where you land, you will take root and live a brilliant life." His eyes were full of admiration. I smiled and nodded, "Okay." David proposed a new product direction. Several shareholders didn't think highly of him and even challenged him in the meeting. After the meeting, I tightly held his hand. "Anything you want to do, I will do my best to help you achieve." I quickly found several important clients for the new product. Coincidentally, they were all CEOs of companies who had connections with my advisor. Through our tireless efforts, the promotion and adoption of the new product were very successful. Especially with the backing of several top-tier hospitals, he gradually gained recognition from his family. On my 27th birthday, David booked a very romantic restaurant. He personally put a ruby ring worth millions on my finger and then kissed me. I, who had sworn never to cry again after my mother's death, cried for the first time. Afterward, I moved into David's apartment. During the day, I was his capable assistant. At night, we healed each other with love. I was very happy during that time. It must have been my mother watching over me from heaven, allowing me to meet the perfect lover. But gradually, I wasn't happy anymore. I met David's former assistant. She was now the wife of a director at a top-tier hospital. She invited me for coffee and then smiled. "He's still the same, likes to look for potential in junior students. Men who are too charismatic make women fall head over heels." Was she jealous? But I quickly dismissed that thought. The director Shimari Ed was known for being handsome and accomplished. I saw a sense of stable happiness on her face. This feeling of happiness left me speechless, and even a little envious. Being with David, all I felt was the exhaustion of falling head over heels. Before, I only handled his work matters. Now, when I got home, I also had to handle his life matters. What he ate, what he wore, I had to take care of everything. Sometimes I wondered, was I his girlfriend, or a full-time nanny? That day, I had drinks at a social event, and the wind outside blew on me, causing me to catch a cold the next day. The next day, David was going to the overseas branch office. When he got to the airport, he realized he had forgotten the stamped contract in the study and told me to bring it to him immediately. I was dizzy from the cold and said I would send a courier/delivery service to deliver it. His voice was serious. "Such an important document, if it gets leaked, it could be disastrous for the company. You've been with me for so long, don't you have this basic awareness?" I had to force myself to go to the company despite feeling weak, and delivered the document to him at the airport as quickly as possible. Seeing my pale face, he just said get some rest and hurried off. I went to the hospital alone for an 4 drip. I was so hungry in the middle of the night that my stomach was rumbling. I wanted some plain rice porridge, so I forced myself to get up and cook some. While I was cooking, I started to cry. The meaning of a partner is to rely on and comfort each other. But my love seemed to be only cold self-sufficiency. My advisor was hospitalized, so I took leave to visit him. When I came out, I ran into a few junior students. I had met them when I was invited to give a lecture at the school. I greeted them warmly. They asked me out for coffee and told me secretively that they had something important to tell me. David was having an ambiguous relationship with a junior student from their class. They traveled to Japan together in private. He secretly gave the junior student a lot of help. The junior student boasted to her classmates that she was going to marry into the White family after graduation and become a rich wife. They had reminded the junior student that David's girlfriend was me. The junior student said she didn't care and would work hard to stand by his side. It dawned on me later, I didn't know when, but David stopped coming with me to visit my advisor. He always made excuses that he was busy. I thought he had some conflict with my advisor. It turned out his fish pond had new fish. I fell seriously ill when I got back. I didn't know if it was from the heartbreak or the recent flu. My whole body felt weak, and I couldn't stop crying. David still asked me to print out the contract and bring it to his office. I said I had taken leave. He was very angry. Samantha, do you know how much work this will delay? How many low-level employees will be affected? I had to force my weak body to take a taxi to the company and place the contract in front of him as quickly as possible. He looked at the contract without lifting his head. Then he asked me, how was your chat with Jeremy? Jeremy was a talented student my advisor was mentoring, and many medical companies were eyeing his project. I shrugged. He spends all day in the school lab. How would I know him? He was half skeptical. In our line of work, we have to keep an eye on rapidly advancing technology and also on promising future stars. David paused, then frowned. Samantha, you can't keep going like this. I interrupted him. With my abilities, I can handle the position of project director. In the past 2 years by David's side, I had become almost a jack of all trades. But my achievements had become his halo. The outside world didn't see my accomplishments, which was not beneficial for job hopping. This was a waste of my energy. The group's former project director was David's uncle. The uncle had an affair and was kicked out of the management corps. The White family was a family business, and there was an unwritten rule that core positions in the group could only be held by White family members. By making this request, I wanted to know what position he and his family placed me in. Indeed, David looked troubled. Although I already had the answer in my heart, I asked anyway, not giving up hope. I handed in my resignation letter. David looked at me with disbelief. Samantha, what are you doing? I'm not making a scene. I put on a serious expression. I'm saying goodbye to an unscrupulous boss. My current work scope and the business I'm involved in far exceed that of a director at this company, but I'm only working as a secretary, and my bonus is even less than middle management. I'm not given opportunities for promotion either. I leaned closer to him, smiling sweetly. Why would I stay here? To bury my talent and waste my youth? As I turned to leave, he suddenly came to his senses and grabbed my wrist. Perhaps feeling the slight warmth of my skin, he realized. You have a cold? I nodded. I'm sorry, I didn't. You know, I told you on the phone. You just didn't care. I tried to shake off his hand, but he held tighter. Samantha, don't leave me. David played the emotional card. We've known each other for almost 10 years, haven't we? When you first started college, you were naive and clueless, like a little hedgehog, bumping into walls everywhere. Especially when I saw you in the school infirmary, I thought then that I wanted to give you everything I could, so. Stop. I interrupted him again. The most profound lesson you taught me was not to be swayed by emotions. No matter how much kindness someone shows you, if it hinders your growth, you must bravely cut them off. I guess he didn't expect to be hit by his own boomerang one day. I took off the small crown gold ring I had worn for many years and placed it in front of him. When you gave it to me, you said I was worth cherishing. Your cage can no longer hold me. I will go to a better place. I had experienced too much bullying and cold treatment since I was born. When others showed me love and care, I would think about doing my best to repay them. The filter of love often made me lose the path that was originally mine. From now on, just being myself is also fine. A pharmaceutical company from Germany extended an offer to me. I would first stay at the Germany headquarters for 3 years. After passing the evaluation, I would be transferred back to the US. David came to see me off at the airport. He still smiled gently and magnanimously. If you need anything, just ask. He hugged me and whispered in my ear, I'm sorry. My eyes felt sore. Not wanting him to see my emotions, I let go and turned to leave. In Germany, the busy work kept me from having time for sadness. Gradually, I thought about David less and less. Later, a former colleague who worked at Mashing Group sent me a photo. David had a new female assistant. The female assistant's background was very similar to mine, a PhD student in a biology-related field. She was not only his assistant but also his girlfriend. The second year after I went abroad, a friend told me that David got married. His wife was the daughter of a matching family in the pharmaceutical industry. Before they got married, the female assistant was fired and even went to the company to cause a scene. An individual couldn't win against the system, so she was paid off. I treated it as casual gossip and forgot about it. These years, David would send me greetings on Facebook during holidays. His messages were slightly ambiguous. I decisively blocked him. A year later than expected, I became the head of the Asia-Pacific region for Ringer Pharma in Germany. The office was located in San Francisco. In a pile of documents, I saw the approval for building a manufacturing plant. The site selection was actually and my hometown's Fairview. The land there was cheap, and the investment terms were very favorable. It had been too many years since I went back. I wanted to take this opportunity to see it again. I hoped that barren land could prosper and allow the girls there a chance to see the outside world. I also wanted to take this opportunity to go back and visit my mother. Fairview hadn't changed much from when I left 10 years ago. Only a new urban area had been built on the southeast side of Fairview. After dinner, I went for a walk on Waterfront Drive and actually ran into Susan. She glanced at me, then cautiously called out, "Samantha?" I nodded. Aunt Susan, long time no see. She had aged considerably. In her 50s, her hair was completely white. She looked me up and down, frowning slightly. "Where have you been all these years?" I was wearing a slightly wrinkled cotton shirt and ripped jeans. My clothes were expensive, but they didn't have logos. In her eyes, I probably looked like I was too poor to even fix my ripped pants. I smiled and replied, "I just traveled around. I was missing my mom, so I came back to visit the grave." Aunt Susan immediately changed to a smug expression. "Kevin is also in the city, but he came back to start a company. He says he wants to build up his hometown. He's married, and his wife is a brilliant student. Congratulations to him then." Seeing no sign of distress or regret on my face, Aunt Susan pretended to lament, "If you hadn't been so ambitious back then and stayed with Kevin, you'd be the one enjoying a good life now." "Ah, what a pity." I didn't argue, just said, "Then I won't bother you any longer. I'll be going now." I went to visit the grave of my mother. Her grave was clean and tidy. My maternal uncle always said she had disgraced the family, but he still couldn't bear to leave her exposed to the elements and would come to tend to it from time to time. I was very grateful for the words my mother left me before she died. Th. EY always helped me find the right choice whenever I felt lost at a crossroads in life. I inspected the land for the factory building and verified the various conditions. After finishing my business, I was ready to head back to San Francisco. The project manager was named Walter. Before I left, he insisted on inviting me to dinner. Thinking we would be working together frequently in the future, I agreed. At the entrance, a middle-aged, overweight sleazy man called out to me, "Samantha Sue." It took me a second look to recognize him as Kevin. He was holding hands with a young woman. The woman was wearing a dress with prominent logos and carrying a bag with a prominent designer logo/lock. Aunt Susan had said he was married, so I guessed the woman was his wife. I politely greeted him, "Long time no see." Kevin gloated, "My mom said she saw you the other day." I was surprised. "Aren't you supposed to be amazing? What are you doing back in this little county?" Why would he come back if he looked down on this little county so much? I glanced at him and said nothing. He thought I was lacking confidence and continued, "I knew all along that David wouldn't marry you. You have no self-awareness. How could a rich person like him want a country girl like you? You were just a plaything. If you hadn't broken up with me back then, you'd be enjoying the good life now." Saying this, he pulled the young woman into his arms. I smiled. "Everyone has their own destiny. You can't force things." "That's right. You're over 30 now. Besides accepting your fate, there's nothing you can do to change things." I didn't want to deal with him anymore and hurried upstairs. Before I found the private room, my phone rang. It was a call from headquarters. I quickly found a quiet place to answer. By the time I finished the call, dinner was already being served. I asked a server and found the private room. I stood at the entrance and immediately saw Kevin sitting inside, with his wife also there. I quickly scanned the room. Walter was there, and another man I didn't know. It seemed this wasn't just a simple dinner. Kevin saw me first. He immediately stood up and rushed towards me. His tone was annoyed. "Are you crazy? Why are you following me? Do you think I'll look at you more just because you followed me here?" Then, he lowered his voice and softened his tone. "If you really want to be with me, wait downstairs. I have something important to discuss tonight. I'll find you later." looking at his face, which was greasy like an oil pancake. Where did he get such confidence? I shook off his hand. Get lost. Walter and the man inside also noticed the commotion at the door. Hearing me tell Kevin to get lost, they knew something was wrong. Walter quickly came forward. Miss Sue, please come in. Walter gave Kevin a resentful glare. The man walked up and grabbed Kevin's collar, gritting his teeth. She's the client's CEO. If this deal falls through, I won't let you off the hook. I didn't eat much during this meal, listening to their apologies and then their boasting. They wanted the contract for building the factory building. I had no interest in playing games with them and just said everything would proceed according to procedure. I figured with the qualifications of Kevin and his partner's company in Fairview, there was no way they would get the factory project through the proper channels. My answer was firm and decisive. Her last words to me before she died were, better to earn your own fortune than prop up his ambition. I anticipated that Kevin might bring Susan into the picture to play the emotional card, so early the next morning, I set off back to San Francisco. I had my assistant find several construction companies with large qualifications to bid for the project. I also specifically instructed the project director to keep a close eye on the factory project below and not let anyone abuse their position for private gain. I guessed that Walter had given my phone number to Kevin. Susan called me, saying she wanted to catch up. I said I was busy and didn't have time. Her previously flattering tone quickly turned sharp. Samantha Sue, you heartless wretch. I raised you for so long, and you won't even help your boyfriend and your mother. I didn't wait for her to finish and coldly replied, then go sue me. I blocked Susan's phone number. Susan even called the company's front desk. High-level executives like me weren't easily accessible. The front desk always gave polite excuses. Susan called many times, realized it wouldn't work, and stopped calling. Before long, I received 2 summons from the court, both suing me for support payments. One was from my father. One was from Susan. I immediately hired a lawyer to represent me and handle everything. My father clamored for mediation and hoped to see me. I refused. When he denied my mother and me back then, our father-daughter relationship ended. I had someone inquire about my biological father's recent situation. His son from his second marriage had liver cancer and passed away 2 years ago. After signing the documents, I turned my chair and looked at the city's prosperity outside the floor-to-ceiling window. At this moment, although I was lonely, I also felt free and unburdened.